I am Susan Diane, and as I near my 30th birthday, I find myself caught in a whirlwind of emotional and physical exhaustion. My life, once a balance of personal ambition and dreams of domestic bliss, is teetering on the brink. The strain of raising our child nearly alone weighs heavily on me, the nights echoing with Thea's cries as she struggles to sleep. Each wail is a stark reminder of my solitude in this chapter of motherhood, a role I had once assumed would be a shared journey. Michael, on the other hand, seems to inhabit a different world. His support, so crucial during these trying times, has become a specter, discussed but rarely seen. I remember pleading with him, my voice shaky with desperation, to reconsider his sudden plan. "Michael, please, this isn't the time for a vacation. I need you here, with me, with Thea." Yet his response was tinged with irritation, his words a cold dismissal of my pleas. "It's none of your business," he had snapped, before declaring his intent to escape to Mexico with his sisters. How trivial my struggles seemed to him as he packed with a grin, his excitement palpable and piercing. Left alone, the doorway framed my crumbling resolve as I heard Thea's cries from her room. My legs felt rooted to the spot, my body unwilling to chase after Michael, my heart splintering with each sob that slipped through the cracks of our home. The tears I shed were not just for Thea's distress, but for the betrayal of a partner who chose leisure over his family. Michael had once been different. When we met, he was the charismatic bartender with a warm smile that could cut through the worst of days. His easy charm had drawn me in, turning casual after-work drinks into intimate evenings filled with shared dreams and laughter. Back then, Michael had seemed like the perfect counterbalance to the stress of my corporate job, his presence a comforting constant as I climbed the career ladder. Our love story had defied the odds. Despite initial family skepticism and the subtle nudges towards more suitable partners within my professional circle, I chose Michael. I chose love. He had been my haven, taking on household responsibilities with a tender diligence that made our early marriage feel like a true partnership. But as the years have passed, the man who once promised to share the burdens of life seems to have receded, replaced by someone whose actions are carelessly self-serving. The final straw was his brazen use of my gold card, spending without a second thought, his entitlement overshadowing the commitment we had once made to support each other. Now, as I stand in the echoing silence of our home, the pain sharpens into clarity. Michael's departure is not just a physical distance, it is a rift in trust, a clear divide in our paths. I can no longer ignore the signs of his manipulation. With a resolve as cold as the tears drying on my cheeks, I begin to plan. Not just for Thea and myself, but against the man who has taken so much and given so little in return. My heart hardens with each step I take, each plan I make, a necessary armor against the pain of betrayal. A considerate arrangement, but something about his tone unsettled me. Michael's sudden shift in roles from being a contributing partner to relying solely on my income felt abrupt and calculated rather than supportive. As the early days of our marriage filled our home with the comforting smells of his cooking and the shared responsibilities, I felt secure in our partnership. The delicious meals laid out every evening seemed like tangible proof of our mutual support. Those were the days when coming home felt like stepping into a warm embrace, where Michael's thoughtful gestures made me sure I had made the right decision in marrying him. However, that evening, with my salary slip exposed and Michael's eyes tracing the numbers with a hint of awe and surprise, marked a turning point. His admission that he hadn't realized just how much I earned introduced a crack in the foundation of our trust. It was a moment of revelation that perhaps our perceptions of each other's roles were vastly different. I had never made a point of hiding my income, but Michael had never inquired, nor had I felt the need to disclose it without prompt. His subsequent decision to quit his job struck me as impulsive and poorly timed, especially considering the responsibility of supporting our future child. His rationale, that he would take care of the home while I focused on my career, seemed practical on the surface. Yet, it also implied a shift in our dynamic that I hadn't agreed to, a shift that placed the financial burden entirely on my shoulders. That night, as I broke the news of my pregnancy, I hoped it would bring us back to a place of mutual support and excitement. Instead, his immediate jump to discuss the financial logistics, specifically my maternity leave benefits, felt jarring. There was a coldness in prioritizing the practical over the emotional significance of our expanding family. "Michael, it's not just about the money," I found myself saying, the weight of my words heavy in the air between us. "It's about us, about being partners. How we both contribute to this family." He nodded, seemingly understanding, but his next words, "Sure, but we need to think practically about the finances," made it clear that our views on this new phase of life were misaligned. His focus remained narrowly on the financial aspect, while I grappled with the broader implications of his unemployment on our relationship dynamics and emotional health. This conversation left me feeling more alone than ever, despite the life growing inside me. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with doubts about our future together. How would we navigate this new reality? Could our relationship withstand the strain of these new roles? Michael's turn towards a purely domestic role, while placing all economic responsibility on me, was a solution I had never envisioned for us. As I drifted into uneasy sleep, the joy of my pregnancy was overshadowed by the growing fear of what lay ahead. Michael's reassurances that he was acting in my best interest began to ring hollow as I navigated the shifting landscape of our relationship and the physical demands of pregnancy. The disparity between our incomes had always been a silent understanding between us, but the new reliance on my salary alone amplified my worries about our future sustainability. Each day, as I grappled with these concerns, my doubts about Michael's commitment to our shared life grew heavier. Despite the joyful news from the doctor confirming our baby was healthy and developing well, my happiness was tempered by the increasing strain at home. Michael's approach to his domestic responsibilities, which he had once embraced, now seemed to falter. The disorder that greeted me each day upon returning from work spoke volumes. Dishes piled up unwashed in the sink, and the general untidiness of our home became a stark, visual reminder of his neglect. His casual dismissal of home duties reached a new peak one evening when, exhausted from my day at work and the physical toll of my pregnancy, I found Michael sprawled on the sofa, lost in his phone. His nonchalant suggestion to just heat up some frozen food for dinner, as he recounted his relaxing day out, left me feeling both frustrated and disheartened. It was clear that the dynamic we once shared was unraveling, and his priorities had shifted dramatically away from our family. As my maternity leave began, and I spent more time at home, these issues became even more pronounced. My attempts to engage Michael in more equitable sharing of household responsibilities were met with resistance and accusations of unfairness. "Since you are at home now, you do it," he would argue, brushing off my requests for help with a hurtful ease. His words not only showed a lack of support but also a disregard for the physical and emotional changes I was experiencing. Our home, once a place of shared dreams and cooperation, began to feel like a battleground of unmet expectations and escalating conflicts. However, amidst the growing tensions, there was a silver lining. Our baby girl, Thea, was born healthy, bringing a burst of joy and love into our strained circumstances. To support me during this pivotal time, my mother came to stay with us. Her presence was a comforting and stabilizing force, helping to manage the household and allowing me to focus on Thea without the added stress of domestic chaos. My sister Marin, who had been a source of strength and advice throughout my pregnancy, visited often with her husband, Vince. They brought not just practical help but also stories of their own experiences, weaving a sense of normalcy and family support around us. As I adjusted to motherhood with Thea cradled in my arms, I found myself relying more on the women in my life. Their support underscored what I was increasingly feeling about Michael's place in our lives. His presence was becoming more peripheral, his contributions less impactful on the day-to-day joy and challenges of raising our daughter. In this new chapter, as I navigated the complexities of motherhood and reassessed our relationship, I was grateful for the unconditional support of my family. They were my pillars, holding me steady as I began to ponder the future of my marriage and the well-being of our little Thea. As my sister Marin came to visit more frequently, her presence seemed to breathe some liveliness into our otherwise strained household. Her arrival always brought a burst of warmth, her arms full of gifts and her face alight with genuine affection for Thea. Yet, amidst this warmth, I couldn't help but notice Michael's behavior change subtly in her presence. He seemed more animated, more engaged, qualities I found myself missing during our daily interactions. Marin, with her carefree spirit and natural charm, had always been the kind of woman who drew people to her effortlessly. It was no surprise that Michael, too, seemed taken with her vivacity. However, his attentiveness to her during these visits started to unsettle me. It was as if he reserved his best self for those moments, contrasting starkly with the apathy he displayed towards our own family's needs. One particularly hot day, as Marin complained about the heat, Michael sprang into action, his movements quick and eager as he prepared a cold juice for her. "Here you go, Marin. A refreshing drink just for you," he said, handing her the glass with a flourish. Marin's offhand comment about wishing her husband were as thoughtful echoed oddly in the room. Michael's smile lingered too long, his gaze a little too attentive. It was a simple gesture, making a drink, but it was done with a care I hadn't seen him apply to his duties at home in months. The contrast became more glaring as the days passed. While Marin and Michael chatted and laughed, I found myself increasingly isolated in the relentless cycle of childcare. Thea's night cries were wearing me down, each sleepless night stacking upon the last until I felt I could crumble under the weight of my fatigue and frustration. Michael's patience with Thea seemed to be thinning as well. One night, pushed to his limit, he burst out, "I can't take it anymore. If this keeps up, I might lose my mind." His words cut through the quiet of the night, stark and cold. I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. "If you don't like it here so much, why don't you find a job outside? You barely help around the house, and you don't take care of Thea at all," I shouted, the pent-up stress and resentment boiling over. Michael simply shrugged, his response chilling. "Isn't the income during your maternity leave enough to sustain our current lifestyle? Do I really need to hustle and work outside?" His calm yet sharp stare was dismissive, a clear signal that he had no intention of changing his ways or contributing more. The realization hit me hard. Here was the man who was supposed to be my partner and co-parent, yet he seemed more interested in escaping responsibilities than sharing them. How could he not see the burden I was carrying? How could he be so indifferent to the cost, both emotional and financial, of raising our daughter? His attitude made it painfully clear that Michael had disengaged from us, from the very essence of what made us a family. His focus was elsewhere, perhaps lost in the ease of his interactions with Marin, or simply sunk into a selfish desire for an easier life that didn't include the hard parts of parenting and partnership. As these realizations settled in, a profound sense of betrayal and loneliness enveloped me, deepening the rift that had been growing silently between us. My heart sank deeper with each word Michael spoke. The ease with which he announced his impromptu trip, his plans neatly laid out as if our life together and the responsibilities that came with it could just be paused at his convenience, left me reeling. His detachment from the reality of our struggles at home, from the daily exhaustion I faced as a mother and wife, struck me with a cold harshness. "I'm just going to refresh myself." "It's important to have some personal time," Michael declared, his tone dismissive, almost smug, as if he had found a perfectly reasonable escape from the turmoil he contributed to. His cold gaze seemed to look right through me, not seeing the weariness in my eyes or the desperation in my plea for support. As he turned to leave, the sound of Thea's crying anchored me in place. I couldn't chase after him, my responsibilities as a mother held me back, literally and figuratively. I felt torn between confronting him and attending to our daughter, whose needs were immediate and non-negotiable. With Michael gone, I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Marin's number. The conversation that followed did little to ease my worries. Marin's casual acceptance of the situation, her justification of the need for a break under stress, only added to my sense of isolation. It was as if my struggles, so vivid and overwhelming, were invisible to them both. "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, but I truly believe that taking a break is absolutely essential when things get mentally tough," Marin said, her voice light, almost cheerful. She spoke of finding flight tickets to Mexico as if she had merely stumbled upon a great vacation deal, not a plan that would further strain a marriage and a family already on the brink. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of betrayal and resignation. The people I needed most seemed to have formed a consensus without me, deciding that their comfort was paramount, irrespective of the cost to me or to our family's unity. As I stood there, phone in hand, listening to Thea's cries soften into whimpers of sleep, the reality of my situation became painfully clear. I was alone, not just physically in the room with my daughter, but emotionally, as the partnership I thought I had was proving to be hollow. The disparity between what I believed marriage and parenthood to be and the reality I was living widened, leaving me to ponder the future of our relationship and the well-being of our daughter. How would I manage this new reality? Could I continue in a marriage where my partner saw escape rather than endurance as the solution to our problems? These questions haunted me as I prepared for the night ahead, one filled with uncertainty and the heavy silence of Michael's absence. The card immediately, explaining the situation as a potential unauthorized use. The customer service representative was understanding, assuring me that they would halt any further transactions and send me a detailed report of the recent expenditures. The satisfaction of knowing that Michael would soon face the consequences of his actions gave me a momentary sense of control over the chaos that had enveloped my life. I imagined him at the counter, trying to settle a bill, only to find that the card had been declined. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless, in the face of his betrayal and disregard for our family's well-being. As I hung up the phone, a sense of solemnity settled over me. The reality of the situation was stark. My husband, the man I had chosen to build a life with, had not only left me alone with our daughter during a particularly vulnerable time, but had also taken advantage of my trust and resources to fund an escapade with my sister and his friend. The irony of the situation was bitter. The gold card, a symbol of my hard work and dedication to my career, had become an enabler of his irresponsibility. Thea's cries from the next room snapped me back to the immediate needs of the moment. I wiped away my tears, steeled myself, and went to comfort her. As I soothed my daughter, the stark contrast between my responsibilities and Michael's escapism became painfully clear. I was here, tending to our child, maintaining our home, while he was miles away, seemingly without a care. During the days that followed, the living room remained a mess, a reflection of the turmoil in my life. The scattered toys, unwashed dishes, and half-done laundry were daily reminders of my overwhelming load. Despite the exhaustion and emotional drain, I began to organize the house, slowly regaining a sense of order and control. Each task I completed was a step toward reclaiming my independence and strength. As I worked through the chaos, my mind was flooded with thoughts about the future. What would happen when Michael returned? How would we confront the situation? The clarity of my next steps began to form. This incident had illuminated the deep flaws in our relationship and Michael's character. It was evident that something had to change. I needed to prepare, not just for the immediate confrontation when Michael returned, but for the broader implications for our marriage and family life. The resolve to protect myself and Thea from further harm grew stronger with each passing moment. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but the events of the past few days had shown me that I was capable of facing challenges head-on, even when pitted against the person who was supposed to be my partner in life. Out during their stay, adding to the shock of the situation. Her casual mention of expecting me to cover the expenses because I was Michael's wife felt like another blow to my already fragile state of mind. I couldn't help but wonder how deeply the deceit ran between them. Marin, using my gold card without my permission is not justifiable under any circumstances. It's not about being Michael's wife, it's about respect and consent, neither of which were considered here, I responded, my voice stern and filled with disbelief at her rationale. Marin seemed taken aback by my firmness, perhaps expecting me to acquiesce or offer some form of support to rectify the situation. Her tone shifted from anger to pleading. But Susan, we thought you would understand. Michael needed this break, and we didn't think it would be a big deal since the card was always used for family expenses. I paused, taking a moment to gather my thoughts before replying. It's one thing to support family expenses for necessities, Marin, but quite another to finance an entire international trip and shopping sprees without my knowledge. This is a clear breach of trust, not just a simple misunderstanding. The conversation grew tenser as I processed the extent of the betrayal. The idea that my sister and husband, two of the people closest to me, would orchestrate such a plan and assume my acquiescence struck a deep chord. It highlighted not just a lack of respect, but a fundamental disregard for my autonomy and hard work. I need you to understand something very important, Marin, I continued, my voice calm but firm. What you and Michael have done is not only unethical, it's illegal. You used a card in my name without permission. That's fraud. Marin was silent on the other end of the line, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, I mulled over the next steps. It was clear that boundaries had been crossed, and the implications of their actions were now catching up with them in the form of security interrogations and potential legal troubles. I will need to consult with my lawyer about this, Marin. I suggest you and Vince do the same, I advised her. The call ended with a heavy silence, leaving me to reflect on the unraveled threads of trust and the looming decisions about my marriage and familial relationships. In the solitude of my living room, with Thea now quietly sleeping, I contemplated the deep rifts that had formed, not just between Michael and me, but throughout my family. The deceit had spread far and wide, affecting everyone involved. The path to reconciliation seemed daunting, if not impossible. As I sat there, the weight of the emotional and legal fallout weighed heavily on my heart, signaling the start of a long and uncertain journey toward resolution or perhaps a new beginning. Vince's revelation hit me like a physical blow, his words reverberating in my ears as I struggled to process the magnitude of what he was saying. The suspicion that had been nagging at me, the discomfort I felt watching Michael and Marin together, suddenly crystallized into a stark, painful reality. Are you sure about this, Vince? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper, each word heavy with disbelief. Yes, Susan, I'm afraid it's true, Vince replied, his tone somber. I didn't want to believe it myself, but there have been signs. I think it's been going on for a while. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this. The room spun around me as I tried to come to terms with this betrayal. Not only had Marin and Michael conspired to use my resources under false pretenses, but their relationship had evolved in a way that betrayed more than just my trust. They had betrayed the very foundation of what I believed our family and friendship were built on. Feeling numb, I listened as Vince continued, his voice now filled with urgency. Susan, I think it's best if I come back on my own. I need to sort things out with Marin, and frankly, I don't think it's right to ask you for more help under these circumstances. There was a pause, and then I heard Marin's voice again, her tone desperate and demanding. Susan, please, just lift the card suspension. You don't understand how difficult things are here. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. My heart, once open and trusting, had hardened in the span of our brief conversation. The realization that my sister and husband could deceive me so deeply was too much to bear. Marin, I can't do that, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. What you both did was not only wrong, it was illegal. I have to think about my daughter and my own well-being now. You need to find another way home. Her protests grew louder, but I didn't yield. After a few more exchanges, Vince spoke up again, his voice cutting through Marin's arguments. We'll figure something out, Marin. Let's end the call now. As the call ended, the silence of my home enveloped me. The reality of my situation was overwhelming. My husband and my sister had betrayed me in the most intimate of ways, and the financial betrayal was just the tip of the iceberg. My mind raced with the implications for our family, for my daughter, and for my own emotional and financial security. I needed to make decisions, not just about the immediate issues of the credit card and their return, but about the future of my marriage and my relationship with Marin. The trust that had been broken seemed irreparable, and as I sat alone, the weight of my next steps pressed heavily upon me. The path forward was uncertain, but I knew that it would have to be one that I forged based on the new, harsh truths of my life. I wouldn't notice? The signs had been there all along, subtly placed but unmistakable to someone looking closely. Your overly warm greetings, the lingering touches, the way you would fix your makeup just before he arrived, it all pointed to something more than just familial affection. In the silence of the aftermath of my revelation, I struggled to contain the flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. The betrayal was not just a breach of trust, it was a deep, personal violation that shook the very foundations of my family relationships. The person I had confided in, the sister I had loved and trusted, was now at the center of my marital crisis. As Maren struggled for words, her silence spoke volumes. I could see the guilt written all over her face, her eyes darting away, unable to meet mine. The room felt suffocating, the tension palpable. I needed to hear her say it, to admit what I had seen, but part of me dreaded the confirmation. Maren, please, just tell me the truth. It's obvious something's going on. I saw you with Michael, I said, my voice a mix of anger and pleading. This wasn't just about catching a cheating spouse, it was about understanding the betrayal by someone I had never expected to be an adversary. Maren's shoulders slumped, the facade of innocence crumbling under the weight of her conscience. Susan, I didn't know how to tell you. It started out innocently enough, just talking and sharing. But one thing led to another, she finally confessed, her voice breaking with each word. The confirmation hit me like a wave, leaving me momentarily speechless. The truth I had feared was now out in the open, rendering me momentarily powerless. The trust one had placed in both Michael and Maren was shattered, leaving behind a mess of emotions and broken relationships. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. I trusted you both. You were my family. How could you do this to me, to us? To Vince? The questions poured out, each one laden with the weight of betrayal. Maren's eyes filled with tears, her usual composure now replaced by a look of remorse. I'm so sorry, Susan. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I know that's no excuse. I don't expect you to forgive me, not now, not ever. The conversation that night was long and painful. We delved into the depths of their deception, unraveling the timeline and the extent of their relationship. With each detail, the foundation of what I believed about my marriage and my sister was further eroded. I knew that this was a turning point. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with decisions about my marriage, my relationship with my sister, and the future of our family. The trust that had once held us together was now a casualty of their actions, and rebuilding it, if even possible, would be a monumental task. As the dawn approached, the weight of the night's revelations left me exhausted but resolute. Things would change, and I would have to be strong, for myself and for my daughter. The path forward was uncertain, but I was determined to navigate it with dignity and resolve. I remember glancing at my phone with a mix of trepidation and resignation when I saw Michael's name on the caller ID. His voice, when I answered, carried a blend of desperation and bewilderment. Susan, what's going on? Why did you leave us like that? His question, framed as if he were the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own downfall, reignited a flicker of anger within me. Michael, after everything that's happened, you still expect me to provide for you? I replied, my voice steady despite the churn of emotions. I just thought you would understand. We're stuck here, and we need help, he stammered, the usual confidence in his tone replaced by uncertainty. Michael, you made your choices, I said, cutting him off. You chose to betray our family, to engage in a relationship with Maren, and to deceive me. You and Maren must now face the consequences of those choices without expecting rescue from me. There was a pause on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence. I could almost picture him, the realization slowly sinking in that the safety net he always assumed would be there was now gone. Look, Susan, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't realize how far things had gone until it was too late, he finally said, his voice a mix of regret and a plea for sympathy. Sorry doesn't change what you did, Michael. It doesn't erase the betrayal or the hurt you've caused, I replied, my words clipped and devoid of the warmth he once knew. You need to sort this out on your own. I've got my own path to follow now, one that doesn't include you or Maren. Ending the call, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that I had stood my ground, and sorrow for the loss of what I had once believed my marriage to be. It was clear that the healing process would be long and painful, but necessary for me to rebuild my life without the shadow of deceit hanging over it. Vince, through it all, proved to be a surprising pillar of strength. Together, we finalized the necessary legal and financial separations that would protect our interests and prevent further entanglements with Michael and Maren. Our cooperation solidified a friendship that was based on mutual respect and shared experiences of betrayal. As days turned into weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life and caring for Thea, who remained my top priority through the upheaval. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, as Michael had little ground to stand on given the circumstances. The finality of the divorce decree was a sobering reminder of how drastically life could change. Meanwhile, reports trickled in from mutual friends that Michael and Maren were trying to make a new start with the reluctant assistance of their families. Their return to the U.S. was marred by a tarnished reputation and strained family relationships. Life, as it always does, moved forward. My days were filled with the responsibilities of work and motherhood, but also with new opportunities for personal growth and happiness that I had never imagined in the darkest moments of my ordeal. Each step, though sometimes faltering, took me further from the past and closer to a future I was slowly shaping into something beautiful and mine alone. Is not working. Can you help me find a place to stay tonight? She texted Vince, her message conveying a tone of urgency and confusion. I could only imagine the chaos and despair Maren was experiencing, much like Michael, but my focus remained on rebuilding my life and protecting Thea from the instability their actions had created. My decisions, though harsh to them, were necessary boundaries to safeguard our future. Meanwhile, Vince, having been an unwitting participant in this drama from the start, had distanced himself from Maren as well. His response to her plea was measured and devoid of the warmth it once might have held. Maren, I think it's best if you sort this out on your own. I've moved on from our past arrangements, and I suggest you do the same. As for me, settling into the new environment with Thea, I felt a profound sense of peace that had been missing for so long. The fresh start was not just about a new location, but about establishing a life where trust, respect, and love were the foundations, values deeply eroded in my previous life with Michael. My phone buzzed occasionally with attempts from Michael to reach out, his messages oscillating between pleading for reconciliation and angrily demanding explanations. Each message went unanswered. My resolve to maintain this boundary was ironclad. The legal proceedings for the divorce moved forward smoothly, with the evidence of Michael's misuse of the credit card bolstering my case. The court quickly recognized the severity of his actions and granted the divorce, including favorable terms for me to ensure Thea's stability and well-being. With the divorce finalized, I felt a finality that was both liberating and somber. It marked the end of a chapter filled with betrayal, but also the start of something new and hopeful. I dedicated myself to raising Thea in a healthy environment, focused on her growth and happiness, far removed from the turmoil of the past. As the weeks turned into months, Thea and I established routines in our new home, finding joy in the simplicity of our days. The community around us proved to be supportive, offering a network of friends and resources that enriched our lives. I sometimes paused to reflect on the journey, the pain of the betrayal still a sharp memory, but these moments were increasingly overshadowed by the joys of our new life. Life without Michael and Maren became the new normal, a reality filled with potential and promise. I found strength in my independence and solace in the love I had for my daughter. As I built a career that accommodated my role as a single mother, I found that each success felt doubly sweet, knowing I had overcome such deep adversity. In the quiet moments, when Thea slept and the world seemed to pause, I sometimes thought about forgiveness. Perhaps one day, the pain would fade enough to allow for it, but for now, I focused on the present, on healing, and on creating a future filled with love and laughter for Thea and me. And to find joy in the small, everyday moments we share. The fresh air and gentle sun during our strolls seemed to wash away the remnants of past turmoil, leaving a sense of renewal and hope. As I watched Thea play, her laughter mingling with the chirps of birds and the rustle of leaves, I often find myself reflecting on the journey that brought us here. It's a mixture of sorrow for what we've endured and gratitude for the new beginnings. Despite the heartache, these moments with Thea are precious and filled with unconditional love. Navigating life as a single mother is not without its challenges. Every day comes with its set of trials and triumphs, but with each difficulty, I find myself growing stronger and more resilient. I've learned to rely on my community more than ever, neighbors who drop by with homemade meals, friends who offer to babysit Thea when I need a moment to myself, and family who are always a phone call away, ready to offer words of encouragement or a listening ear. Financial stability, once a significant concern, has begun to solidify thanks to prudent planning and a supportive work environment. My career has adapted to my new life circumstances. I am able to work flexible hours, contributing to my professional growth while ensuring that I'm there for Thea when she needs me most. The balance is delicate and sometimes precarious, but it's manageable with the structures and support systems I've put in place. On weekends, Thea and I often visit the local library where she participates in storytime sessions, while I lose myself in books that offer both an escape and insight into various aspects of life and personal growth. These quiet moments of learning and exploration have become a cornerstone of our weekend routine, helping to expand her world and rebuild mine. Despite the hurdles, I've started to feel a deep sense of contentment. There's a part of me that has found peace in the simplicity of our lives now, away from the chaos that once seemed endless. I'm building a life where Thea can thrive, surrounded by love and stability. And as I lay her down each night, watching her drift into sleep with a serene expression, I feel a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. My thoughts often drift to Michael and Marin, wondering how they are managing their new reality. The choices they made led them down a challenging path, and while part of me harbors no ill will towards them, I recognize the importance of maintaining boundaries for the sake of Thea's and my own well-being. Life continues to unfold with its blend of unexpected challenges and beautiful moments. Each step forward is a testament to our resilience and a commitment to crafting a joyful, fulfilling life, regardless of the past. As I look to the future, I'm filled with optimism, ready to embrace whatever comes our way with grace and strength, knowing that the love I have for Thea is the unbreakable foundation upon which everything